Adam is always like half a beat behind the drum.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I feel like there's some delay between our interactions here that's causing that. Anyway.
That is possible.
I've actually wondered if it isn't a delay since you're in Canada.
That's true.
Canada's just naturally behind.
They think I'm slow, eh? In Canada?
No, but I mean, that sounds stupid, and this may be nothing about actual internets, which I don't know, but but I think there's like a thing where it is jumping networks line, and I'm just realizing I am so out of my depth talking about this, I shouldn't.
It's all good.
Fair enough.
That it slows down because it has to jump from one phone line to another, like a guy jumping out of a train onto another train.
That's how you explain it to old people.
Yes. Ryan. Yes. Yes, I am simplifying it for the old people, not because I don't know what the hell I'm talking about.
It's cold here, so the electricity is sluggish.
Indeed.
Canada.
Yes, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Destroy all clickbait. Destroy all clickbait. 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 Clickbait.
Oh, hi. I didn't see you there. What the hell are you doing in my house? Oh, well, no matter. Why don't you sit down, get cozy, and let us pour you a nice cool glass of obnoxious internet content. Yes, it's time once again for Destroy All Clickbait, the podcast that asks, no, really, what the hell are you doing in my house? With me, as always, are Ing and Avi.
Hello.
Oh, boy.
Hello. Doing the howdy doody voice. We're here on a day. We've been raring to go on this one for a while, so we've got some stuff to do, and we're gonna pare down the length of these now. We're gonna be going for under an hour now, so get ready for that excitement, I guess. So what shall we tackle today first?
What's everybody in the mood for? Because we've got 4 stories here. So
Right. Let's look at this Disney one, which
This is one that I tie into some of the damn kids get off my lawn ranting that I've been feeling all this week, so I've already got momentum built up for this.
Oh,
okay.
You're gonna be the old man yelling at the kids to get off your lawn. Okay.
Actually, yeah.
Okay, so apparently this is an article. Sorry, getting over a cold.
And Keira Knightley watching on the Twitch stream takes out her death note.
Uh-oh. How dare they? Well, if she's going after anyone, she's going after the Mary Sue who published this article.
yeah.
Because I have a feeling this was one of these things where, she just talked vaguely about something and it got blown up into an article because they got a celebrity. No, I'm saying that without having read the article properly. But Keira Knightley commented on how she doesn't let her kids watch certain Disney movies, including Cinderella and the Little Mermaid.
Well, specifically her 3-year-old daughter. I mean, Disney describes Cinderella as being relatively proactive because she herself went to the castle. The guy coming to her, even though he didn't really come to her, was kind of inconsequential to that. Like, it happened as a result of her going. Although I do agree with her on the bit on the Little Mermaid.
Well, yeah, just to be clear, so the idea is that she doesn't, if they're not feminist is
enough
the concern, that they're not instilling good values in her 3-year-old daughter.
Right.
And she's even saying, like, oh, I like these, but, I don't want my daughter watching them at this point in her life, basically. I don't know if she says, I'll let her watch them when she's 6 or something.
No, she doesn't. It doesn't seem to go to that, as far as I can tell. Mostly the article goes on to say that Disney has made some pretty feminist movies, so there are certainly movies for her daughter to watch. If classic, like as in the era of Walt, and then in the era of early Renaissance, doesn't fit with her perceptions. And this is interesting because people have noticed that as far as passing the Bendel test, Sleeping Beauty actually passes it with flying colors. It's
because of the three
because of the three fairies. Like, it passes it with flying colors because they all interact and they don't talk about men. Actually, even if you include Aurora in that, the four of them talk without having to talk about a guy. So it's kind of interesting.
Well, it was funny. When I saw Sleeping Beauty as an adult for the first time a few years ago, I was struck by how Aurora is just this non-entity in the story. She's basically an object for the prince to go after, and it's the three fairies who are essentially the leads of the story. Right?
I would actually argue against that. It's more that her animation is so goddamn subtle that any personality she has, you have to really watch for it. Same thing with the prince. They both have extremely subtle animations that if you don't watch for it, you're gonna miss it.
Well, they're pretty forgettable, and you gotta feel like Disney is like, yeah, we've done this, 15 times by now with the princess and the prince and blah, 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 blah.
Oh, yeah.
But,
no, the animators who animated them were bored as hell animating them, but they also knew that they got those characters because they're the best at doing those characters. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know the backstory. I just know that when I watched it, the princess especially doesn't have that much screen time.
No.
I mean, she's literally asleep for a big chunk of the movie.
She's either a baby or she's asleep, yeah.
And Maleficent, of course, gets to dominate, and the three bad fairies. And the prince gets to fight a big dragon at the climax, so he's got kind of a heroic big moment. It always felt a little out of whack also in The Little Mermaid. Something similar happens where it's all about her, and then the climax is
him running a ship into Ursula, yeah.
Of him heroically killing a fat person with a missing mast.
Not just a fat person, but an enlarged fat person.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Who was based off of a drag queen. So.
Yes.
And the scene itself is a homage to the Call of Cthulhu, so...
Ah, interesting. Okay.
Have they said that?
It's specific enough that it... Okay, that's how Cthulhu is quote-unquote killed in the Call of Cthulhu.
Really?
Right.
With the spoiler there that Cthulhu is pierced through the heart through the missing mask, but...
Spoiler is what's dead can never die.
Yeah, he basically just kind of evaporates and reforms.
Uh-huh.
And the only reason why he goes back to sleep is that the stars are not yet right, so...
Uh-huh.
Oh.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That story is extremely arbitrary, in my opinion. Lovecraft's just like, and then a monster attacks, and then Cthulhu's dead and won't wake until the end of the world. Except now he's awake. Except now he hit him with a ship. So now he's going back to sleep.
Oh, God.
And then I threw a boat at him.
Basically, yes. That's what happens. Yeah.
But in any case, I think having grown up with most of the movies, like Cinderella when I was young was my favorite movie. And the reason why it was my favorite movie had absolutely nothing to do with the romance, had absolutely nothing to do with the prince, and had absolutely everything to do with the fact that Cinderella gets a giant sparkly dress.
Uh-huh.
I am not every single little girl in the world, but I'm pretty sure that's something that a lot of them are thinking about when they watch a lot of these movies.
See, I was going to take a guess that, and this might be because I'm thinking of my wife, that the appeal would be the mice.
Ah, yes, that too. I think the scene with the mice and them trying to get kernels of corn, I think it is probably one of the best scenes in the entire movie, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the plot.
For me, it's tooling around in the pumpkin carriage. I mean, that's a pretty sweet ride, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, Cinderella is more of a character, but she kind of gets the mice and the birds and nonsense kind of dominate over her to an extent as well.
Mm-hmm.
And it's funny because all the stuff with Cinderella, you remember, is the Salakadula preparing for the ball stuff. I'm actually scratching my head trying to remember how the climax of that one works. Like, I don't remember a big fight scene at the climax of that one.
I'm pretty sure you can consider the climax as when Lady Tremaine, the stepmother, locks Cinderella in her room. So she can't get out. So then all of the mice have to figure out how to steal the key, get it all the way up the tower, and unlock her. And unlock her from her room.
There's no third act climax where the prince fucking attacks the stepmother with a sword. So holy shit, would that just be fucking wonderful? I said that as a joke.
I know.
But what if it did end like that? Like, there's a lost cut where the last third of Cinderella just slides into I Spit on Your Grave with her taking revenge against her stepfamily.
Oh my god.
Fighting them off with a glass shank made out of the shoe.
Well, I mean, the original...
Have you ever...
The original story, she puts them in hot shoes, which is basically iron shoes that have been heated on coals. No.
That is...
Oh, no, that's Snow White.
That's Snow White. I think in one version, birds randomly pluck their eyes out.
But it's only the stepsisters. It's not the stepmother.
If you go to the really early version, instead of directly intervention of a fairy godmother, it's sort of a vague God is helping her. Or in one version, she goes to her mother's grave and prays on her mother's grave, and a tree sprouts and gives her everything she needs.
Yeah, her mother dies, and then she plants a tree at her mother's grave, and then the tree gives her everything. And the birds that pluck out her stepsister's eyes are birds that live in the tree.
Right, yeah, so it's all kind of being engineered from beyond the grave by her mother is sort of the implication in some versions of the story.
Okay, that's one implication, but a really interesting, if we're doing another take on this, could just be that Cinderella is fucking Carrie.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, Spear Havoc mentions that one version of Cinderella has where the stepsisters cut off part of their feet. One stepsister cuts off her toes, and the other one cuts off her heel.
Okay, I gotta mention the fact that I don't know if you've ever read Roald Dahl's Revolting Rhymes. He does his versions of the various. So Roald Dahl did versions of the various fairy tales, and the one with Cinderella is you're making me remember that Cinderella is the prince. Does in fact go on an orgy of cutting off everyone's head, and like the wicked stepsisters, and at first it's like, yeah, they deserved it, they had it coming, and then the Cinderella basically realizes the prince is a psycho, I don't want to see him again, and runs away.
Oh my god! Oh, of course he does.
Yes, Prince just starts whacking everyone's head off.
Where it turns out, oh hey, the prince is a bit of a sociopath, not a good situation.
Well, with a foot fetish.
Yeah, basically.
Quentin Tarantino's Cinderella.
Oh god! Oh god! You're not wrong.
And again, I said it as a joke, but holy shit, I really want like a horror movie. Or like a thriller movie that now basically is a version of Cinderella, but just where she's Carrie.
There was a similar theory somebody had about Ebenezer Scrooge, that he was he had supernatural mental powers and was generating images. His subconscious was generating images and like doing all these things, and like killed Marley psychokinetically. And anyway.
Oh my god, is this Wait. If I'm hearing this right, does this mean that Scrooge is in some way like a psychic vampire, so that the reason Tiny Tim gets better is because Scrooge stops leeching off of the life force of the Cratchit family?
Or he even gives it back, like he actually starts to give it to Tiny Tim.
Yeah, right.
Holy fuck! Is Ebenezer Scrooge really like John Coffey from The Green Mile?
Oh my god.
That would make a lot of sense, wouldn't it?
Oh, man.
No, it would make no sense.
You entirely missed your calling going into banking, sir!
Yeah.
Oh, my fuck.
You had supernatural powers this whole time.
Ebenezer is the second coming of Christ, but corrupted by the world into evil.
Oh, my God.
Sure, we'll go with that.
So he's the Antichrist, then?
Well, I mean, if we're going... Because in The Green Mile, John Coffey is implied to be the second coming.
Really?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
It's been a while since I've watched the Green Mile, so...
Well, yeah. I would have read him as more of just... I mean, he's a Christ figure.
Yeah, certainly.
He was more of a saint-type figure than specifically the second coming of Christ. But I don't know. Like, I mean...
I don't know enough Bible to be able to say for sure, personally, but that's just
because of specifically like the end where the narrator reveals that he's seemingly not aging, or is
right?
Like that he's not dying of old age, and that's directly referencing the myth of the lone centurion or the Longinus that Jesus's executioner somehow was cursed with. Like, prolonged or eternal life.
Oh.
Presumably, until the second coming, he had to walk the earth.
Right.
Huh.
Yeah. I mean, okay, so I'm not saying whether he's literally that, but it is stories that King was tapping into for that.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
No, it's definitely the Christ story on a prison, basically. And he's actually more the wandering Jew is kind of the character they were thinking of, too. The guy who didn't,
have a
get
home
with the
necessarily,
program. Well, he didn't get with the program, so he would never die. That was the burden.
Mm-hmm.
I've heard, there's a few different characters apparently related to the Christ myth who just did not, sorry to call it a myth, people.
Meh.
Well, no, it fits, because even if you accept that it's happened, there's an elaborate tradition of folklores and retellings and reinterpretations.
Exactly.
So it falls into myth.
Yeah.
Right. The mythos in the larger sense. Anyway, it was
Jesus Christ expanded mythos.
Pretty much.
The EU.
The AU.
The OTEU, yeah. Anyway,
The King James extended universe.
Oh my god.
Yeah. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie The Seventh Seal.
No.
They deal with that character. The idea that, like, there's someone who actually is trying to cause the apocalypse because he is, I believe, this Longinus, the centurion that Ing mentioned, he's lived forever and he's, like, sick of it, so he wants the world to end so that he can stop living forever, basically, which is a cool motivation for Armageddon. It makes complete sense, basically. Yeah. But he's sort of the bad guy in that story.
There's a version of the folklore where it's the Centurion, and then there's one where it is somebody who I think either mocked Jesus or refused to aid him in carrying the cross. It was something where he was a dick to Jesus as he was being crucified, and that becomes the Wandering Jew one.
Yeah, that was Ahasuerus. It was Jesus stopped for a moment in somebody's doorstep, and I think it was a shoe seller, and he said, Go, get out of here. You can't stay on my doorstep. And Jesus said, I will go, but you'll be here when I return. And that was his curse of eternal life, basically. And Ahasuerus, I believe the character's name.
You can see why kind of the preferred one, I think, in modern time is the Centurion, because it skirts less into anti-Semitism.
Right, exactly. It is an anti-Semitic, it's another thing where it's almost interpreting it as that's why Jews are forced to roam the earth and not have a home. He's a stand-in for the entire, Judaism, basically. But, although he's semi-sympathetic in some tellings, too. I mean, it's complicated, but anyway.
Well, because, I mean, if you are going the story just as told there, it's not just being a dick to Jesus. It's like, please don't stay here, because if you dally, Romans will beat me up.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I mean, there's a pretty logical reason. Everyone in that story who is kind of even the ones who are more overtly mean, it's clearly they're like, yeah, but there's a dude there with a spear who's going to stab me if I'm not jeering you loudly enough. You know what I mean? That's the subtext of the whole thing. The whole story with Barabbas as well, who was let go in Jesus' place, basically. They were going to let one guy go and one guy get crucified, and they chose Barabbas. And it was kind of like,
which I gotta point out is almost certainly an entirely added fiction there, because for one, it does not match anything with Roman governance. And for the other, it is specifically there so that the Jews can explicitly be to blame for the crucifixion rather than the Romans, because the church at that time was trying to get in good with one of those people.
Exactly.
One of those groups, and not the other, so...
And the whole thing where he washes his hands, that's just blatantly we put that in later so the Romans are cool and the Jews aren't, very obviously...
No, which, reading any of the history of Pontius Pilate, what we know about him, the attempts to make him seem sympathetic and compassionate are kind of fucking hilarious. And such a severe jolt from what we know about him historically as honestly being a huge fucking bastard who hated everyone in Judea.
Oh my god.
Basically, he was put in charge of Judea because he was one of the people that was seen that he's politically successful enough that he might be potentially down the line a contender for emperor. So basically he was air quote promoted, but promoted far away from Rome. and he seemingly absolutely hated all of it.
Anyway, we should probably get to the next one, because we got way off topic. Yeah.
That was a nice tangent.
Yeah.
I was gonna do a rant on how that it seems that, like, wokeness in general is trying to just recreate Puritan joylessness in an effort to be ideologically pure in that, but I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk about that. And we literally got distracted that somehow went from The Little Mermaid to Jesus, so...
Yeah, that was pretty amazing how we made that leap.
It's not too much of a leap, considering how many particularly European fairy tales are all Christian allegory.
And thus
so.
the devil took Jesus out into the wilderness and says, "Sell me your voice." I wanted to do Millennials Kill Again, the latest victim, American cheese.
Yes.
American cheese. Yes.
American cheese will never die. It has too many preservatives.
Bye, bye, American cheese. Don't want you on my sandwich, I'll take provolone, please. This is another one where we get the side things of other articles on the site.
Yeah.
And we could probably just do this podcast as a 24-hour continuous stream.
Oh, yeah,
Just
definitely.
flicking through these,
Oh,
and
yeah.
I just have to share just the title of this one, which is Hard Times in Candyland.
And it has an icon of a gummy bear and a noose.
Well, the noose is made out of a gummy snake, so
Even
let's...
still, but it's a noose.
Eat your way. Yes, and it doesn't blame millennials, but it does say that people are eating too healthy, and this is bad for the candy industry.
The candy industry is not going to die.
I'm sorry, this is such a fucking non-story. Parents don't want to buy candy for their kids. This is the, like, epitome of not news.
Oh my
Yeah.
god. I worked at a chocolate store. Trust me, people will buy candy if they want candy.
Avi specifically had to sing songs whenever somebody met an
What?
untimely fate at the candy store.
That is correct, yes.
Yeah.
What? Wait a minute. Okay. Oh, because of Oompa Loompa, I guess.
Yeah, it's part of the part of the Loompa Union.
I see. For a second, I thought you were literally describing your actual job, because
Oh,
that
no.
didn't seem completely implausible.
No. No.
That you would have to sing to people as they bought candy.
No,
Anyway.
I did work at Joe's Crab Shack. I don't have to do any singing and dancing, thank goodness.
No, not as they buy candy, only if they meet an unfortunate fate. So
Oh,
if
that's
somebody,
right.
like, slipped on the freshly mopped floor, it would just be all the employees coming out and singing insensitive songs to them as they're pulled away on a stretcher.
Yep. Yeah. Although there was that one time where the mall almost got set on fire, so that happened once.
Wait, what?
Yeah, it was like the weekend before Christmas, and where the bus stop is, a lot of dry leaves collects. So somebody was smoking a cigarette, and instead of getting rid of it properly, apparently threw it into the dried leaves, so they lit on fire. And yeah, the mall kind of was set on fire, and fire trucks had to come, and then they had to evacuate everybody temporarily. It was great. It was great.
You see, kids, smoking kills Christmas.
Back to the cheese one, though. It is
Uh-huh.
it is interesting how they always find the most terrible, like, bland, horrible things, and then bewail that millennials are killing them, as if that was, like, this huge loss. It was always, like, the napkin industry and the mayonnaise, as we discussed in an earlier podcast. Millennials are killing mayonnaise. So now they're killing American cheese, and is anyone actually sad about that?
I'm gonna be honest, I buy American cheese because, okay, put it on a sandwich. I'm also gonna be honest that you buy it because it is the cheapest thing that technically still is cheese as an experience.
Yes.
Which
You don't
is
buy
the role
it because
it plays.
you want it. You buy it because it's theoretically a cheese, and it will give you a cheese-like texture when you're eating something.
It is the baseline of the bare minimum of cheese. Every other cheese is that plus.
Yes. Like, the only time American cheese really tastes good is if you're making a grilled cheese sandwich. Only time. Any other time, another cheese is more preferable.
Even then, you could probably get away with a
yeah.
mix of Swiss and a sharp cheddar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, technically,
gotta-
American cheese is supposed to be like a very, very subpar cheddar. Like, if you go to the deli and you get American cheese at the deli instead of buying, Kraft singles,
Which, to be honest, I do get the deli one of American cheese,
Yeah.
so it is much less like just eating cheese-flavored wax paper.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Well, that's okay. See, that's the thing, because I was just saying, is it like you can get a big ass? I don't know what it's like in America, but in Canada, you can get a big brick of good cheddar for like $6. So, like, why? And that's probably more than you get in a package of American cheese. So why not just get that and have some real tasty cheese instead of this, plastic garbage that...
I think when Kraft singles was a thing, like a really big thing, it had a lot to do with latchkey kids and stuff like that. They needed an easy way to market something that was easy for kids to make. So pre-sliced bread and deli meat with a cheese that you don't have to cut necessarily makes a lot of sense if you're a latchkey kid.
Also, looking it up, American cheese, on average, is $1 less per pound than any other cheese.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's true. That
Well, I
does
can
seem to be the
believe it's-
case whenever I go to the
Yeah.
deli section.
Yeah. So if you leave out all the cheese, then you can save money on your cheese. Great. That's terrific. But I mean,
Indeed!
of all the things to skimp on, cheese is like the last thing I would do, because you can put cheese on all this other garbage and make it taste better and make it more like in a good sandwich, as you say, a grilled cheese sandwich or veggie burgers. Put enough cheese on it and it tastes good anyway. You know what? It's like ketchup, for some people. Not necessarily for myself, but it's one of those things where you get it and you garnish it and it makes everything taste better. So why would you skimp on that and not something else, But voila. And even with cheese, there's a bunch of cheap types of cheese you could get, like Bonbell or Vache qui rit. I don't know if they have Vache qui rit in Laughing Cow in America.
We have Laughing Cow.
Yeah, okay, we call it Vache qui rit in Canada, but it's the same thing. It's that little, I guess it's brie cheese? No, not brie, camembert.
Yeah, I think it's more like
but it's-
camembert.
Yeah, but it's just really cheap camembert. But
Yeah.
it's delicious. Like,
I've actually
get
never
that
had
and-
it, so.
Oh,
Or
I
Bombell.
like it. I mean, I grew up... Yeah, so these are... And Bonbell's the one where it's... I guess it's Gouda or Edam. And
I just know
Edam,
that
I think.
they are the ones that come wrapped in wax and individual
Right.
thingies.
Yeah, so they've got the same, ease of use as American cheese, but they actually taste like cheese. They're actually, tasty and make things taste good. Yeah, Vache qui rit, I personally grew up eating them, so I'm kind of addicted. But I grew up eating American cheese, too, and I grew out of that. So...
Yeah, like I said, I feel like it's a very specific generation it was latched to, and kids really aren't like that anymore. You know?
I'm also going to point out that it's a very mild taste,
Right.
which,
Yeah.
Avi, we have friends that find mayonnaise as too spicy, so...
Yeah, that's true.
So it has an audience for people who want a cheese, but cannot handle... I'm trying to think of a non-judgmental way of saying that they can't handle flavor, but yeah,
You
there's
can just say
always
white people. Anyway.
Well, and the elderly.
It's what I have referred to in my mother's cooking as coworker food. It's the food she cooks for her coworkers because they can't handle anything spicy.
It's odd that they're saying American cheeses have been dying. I've been noticing, though, from my deli purchases, white American cheese has seemingly been getting very popular.
It's because because technically that weird yellowish color is a food coloring. Like,
Yeah.
cheddar is supposed to be... cheddar is supposed to be more of that kind of creamy white color, not really that weird yellowish color. So...
From what I'm looking up on why cheeses are yellow there,
Yeah.
is that strong yellow and orange cheeses, when, they're not just food colored,
Yeah.
are supposed to get that because they're seasoned with annatto.
Oh, okay.
I have noticed, at least in the deli version, the yellow American cheese and the white taste different, so at least in our deli,
Okay.
They seem to be serving, like, the store-brand cheese are genuinely flavored and not just colored.
Yeah, and I could believe that of deli cheese, but, like, again, Kraft singles, no. The white stuff and the yellow stuff taste the same.
Also, I have to imagine that this is the most boring fucking conversation, not only that has ever been said on our podcast, but in the history of the world.
I don't know, we talked about mayonnaise.
And I once listened to my family talk for 3 straight hours about the benefits and downsides to various strains of corn. As I cried silently, my face in my hands, and my wife delightfully edged on the conversation to see how long it would go.
Oh, nice lady.
And the genuine, non-exaggerated answer is in excess of 3 hours these people will fucking talk about corn.
Are they actually farmers?
Farmers and people raised by farmers, so...
Exactly.
The only spice anyone ever needs, and this is actually true, is just eat turmeric. Add turmeric to every single meal and you'll be healthy.
It's not about healthy, it's about tasty.
You don't taste the turmeric, it just turns your food yellow. That's all.
Let's move on to Red Dead can talk about. So, and I really do want to talk about the Red Dead Redemption article, which just dropped today. It is very simply, a writer for Polygon claims that Red Dead Redemption is the best Western ever made in any medium. And this is extremely stupid. I don't think anyone is going to disagree with me on this. This is someone desperately trying to seem, I don't know, contrarian? Not even contrarian, just like... My favorite part of this article is that he literally stops and lists a whole ton of Westerns and says, yes, it's better than Unforgiven and Shane and The Searchers, Stagecoach, Riders of the Purple Sage, The Wild Bunch, Blazing Saddles, Tombstone, Red River, Gunsmoke. Whatever you care to pull from the barrel, Red Dead Redemption is better than that Western. First of all, I don't believe for a second he's seen all those movies, if any of them.
Probably
I think
not.
That he literally Googled Westerns to drop in and say,
Hey, remember the scene in Magnificent Seven where the 7 just chase rabbits on horseback firing shotguns at them for 3 hours?
yeah.
Or would just go into a saloon and play poker until nobody wanted to play anymore.
Remember the glitch in Unforgiven where Clint Eastwood was like flying around in the sky in the distance in one scene?
Remember the time in The Searchers where it loaded the texture modules for animals onto the wire models for people?
Exactly.
I actually do have, like, just a folder on my computer that's a compilation of Red Dead Redemption. Glitches of stuff like that with the horrible coyote people in that.
Oh my god, that's wonderful.
It was a famously glitchy game, apparently.
Which is also amazing that I never managed to get one of those glitches when I played it.
Aww. Isn't that just the way? Whenever you want a glitch to show up, it doesn't show up.
Yeah. Unless it's Bethesda.
Well, yeah.
You got 99 problems, but a glitch ain't one. Oh! I had to say it, sorry.
It's all good. Like, this article is also way too fucking long. Like, he goes into such detail as to all of the shit he does in this game, and it's just kind of like...
Yeah, his rationale is just like, it's pretty. That's really all he's... It's like riding around in the real Old West, and... on a horse.
And part of me wants to be like, okay, you can also do that in Breath of the Wild. Same exact concept. Is Breath of the Wild a really good Western game? No! It's not, because it isn't supposed to be.
Red Dead actually is very good at capturing, like, a feel of Western.
Okay.
Like, the horses actually do not respond accurately, like they wouldn't say Breath of the Wild.
Right.
Because they are basically programmed to kind of have their own agenda, and it seems to be... Well...
I don't trust this horse. He has his own agenda. Go on.
This horse is paid off by Soros! No, but it's the thing that, like, Breath of the Wild, you're riding a horse and you're controlling a horse. In Red Dead Redemption, you're really not controlling the horse. You're on a horse and you're trying to steer it to get it to do what you want it to.
Gotcha.
That sounds fun? Question mark?
And the fact that it is kind of fun, because it's an intentional design thing rather than shitty, like it's intentionally shitty controls, but it kind of it feels right.
So it's kind of like
atmosphere.
Octodad?
Yeah, no, not that fun.
It's
Okay, I'm trying to say that I can see some of where you can say that the game is well designed to give the feel of a Western.
Okay.
And gets that, but...
But to say it's the best Western thing that ever Westerned...
No, I mean... I'm not gonna say that. I don't know if any video game can be the best thing of its genre, just by the nature of the medium there.
In terms of thinking of the genre as Western, thriller, horror, etc., probably not. Just because you can't, because games are interactive. Movies are not interactive. They're completely different storytelling mediums.
It raises an interesting question. Yeah, like, can you actually compare that? That's an actually interesting concept, but they don't engage with that at all.
Oh, really?
It's literally like, it doesn't feel like he knows anything about classic Westerns at all. Like, at one point he says, Red Dead Redemption, more than any other Western, save open range, deals with the death of the West, and renders its demise under the sweeping tide of civilization as something just as savage and cruel as its birth. That's every fucking Western ever made! That is literally the definition of what Westerns are about for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
Literally, like, as the first Westerns, like silent films, were being made, when the West was still... That was actually during the time of the Wild West.
Yeah.
And they were already about that, about the Vanishing West. Buffalo Bill's Wild West show was about that. And that was, starring all the actual people who had been in the Wild West at the time. So, like, as long as people have acknowledged the existence of the Wild West, it's been fading, and we've been talking about the end of the Wild West. So, this is just... a guy who really doesn't know what he's talking about, in other words.
No.
An open range is the one that he says is like...
It is an interesting thing to talk about for, like, kind of video game B, a good example of its genre, and I think the answer definitely is yes, but then looking at, like, how do they do that, because it's a lot harder to look at, like, the exact nit and gritty of what makes it work that way.
Yeah. And, like, people have been comparing in terms of genre video games and movies for a while, and it's just kind of like, at the end of the day, you can't compare them in that fashion. You can compare them as far as, like, storytelling beats and like, actual technical and mechanical things like that. But in terms of, like, what the overall experience is, they're two completely different things.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I would say that if you're trying to replicate the beats of anything, video games would be better at replicating a limited TV series.
yeah, that would
Because I'm trying to think of which ones, in my mind, like, really hit the beat of captured what they were going for well, and the two things that I was thinking of is the Persona series.
Okay.
Persona 4 and 5, which very much does have a very anime series-like feel, and Mass Effect 2, which I think in some ways does feel like a series like The Expanse, but there's also just the way that the pacing there, it would not be a good movie.
Right.
Yeah. And I mean, it's to me, I stopped playing video games before they became these heavily cinematic things. Like, it was always... when I played games, it was always... you're jumping into the game, and there you are, and you have to shoot the things that are coming at you. And that was almost the only story you got.
Right.
And if there was any story, it was like, oh, the princess has been kidnapped, you gotta go rescue her.
Are you a bad enough dude to rescue the president from ninjas?
Yeah.
Exactly. Are you a bad enough dude to
I
rescue
think
the president?
it took like 20 years later for somebody to find out that Doom, the original Doom, did in fact have a plot, and it was very anti-capitalism.
Yeah. Right. It's just, it doesn't, and in many cases it doesn't matter. And to me, so it always seems weird to me that there's all this talk about the story and the characters and stuff like that. And I'm like, if I want to watch a movie, I'll watch a movie. And the thing about video games is it's kind of okay for them to rehash existing movies and existing TV shows, because the idea is just, it's that, but now you can play it and be it.
Right.
And they're like, okay, that's kind of cool, obviously. But I will say there was the exception, which was the LucasArts games. Those, of course, had a story.
Point-and-click adventure games are a little bit different.
Oh, for sure.
In terms of their structure, so...
But I mean, just the fact that type of
because
game
their structure is effectively that you're doing kind of a D&D game over the mail with somebody who's an absolute psychotic.
Yeah,
right.
Whether it's LucasArts or Sierra,
Sierra, a lot more.
A lot more with Sierra, definitely.
Yeah.
Good old-fashioned moon logic.
Why am I making a fake mustache out of cat hair? Why is this a thing?
So I like those games. Those were cool. Those were fun games to play. But it was kind of a different... It felt weird to me that they've now put that and in the same games where you're running around shooting guys all the time. And I watched my friend play Red Dead Redemption a bit. My only real exposure to Red Dead Redemption, because I haven't played it otherwise. I don't have a game system or anything. He got on a cart, and the guy was just giving him this elaborate backstory. And to be fair, you were playing the game. You were riding on this cart and driving over some wilderness and stuff, so it wasn't like you were just sitting and watching. But it was just going on and on and on about what was happening, and it wasn't... And from what I've seen, most games do not have the most compelling dialogue or the most compelling... And so, why? And I feel like they could be done in like half the time, and they're just kind of showing off, oh, hey, we've got all this dialogue, we've got characters, and we got blah, 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 blah. It's like, it would be a virtue to trim that to the... Even in a movie, it's a virtue to trim down the amount of dialogue, the amount of, like, unnecessary scenes that help you convey the story. You watch Fun Time in the West or another Sergio Leone Western, and apparently Clint Eastwood, when they were shooting, I don't know if it was The Good, the Bad, the Ugly or Fistful of Dollars, but apparently he wrote, the original script had all kinds of dialogue for his characters. And Eastwood actually came in, the first time I've ever heard of an actor doing this, and said, no, we're cutting this dialogue. we're going to do it pure visually. It's just going to be me exchanging a look with that guy, and we're looking, and it's all going to be visual acting, and that's going to convey the story. And he was 100% right. That's how it worked. And it's what makes those movies so memorable is that it's all done as much as possible with the visuals and not the dialogue.
Right.
And video games, if anything, should be more of that. It shouldn't be reliant on dialogue. So when you have pages and pages of dialogue in a video game, I feel like you're not really doing your job, guys. You should be getting to the gameplay.
You would think, but a lot of people are really bad at picking up visual cues. Really bad. And Rihanna Pratchett, daughter of Terry Pratchett, because we have to bring Discworld into this somehow, I don't remember when she said this, but she said something along the lines of, with video games, because that's what she does, she writes for video games, with video games, the writing is the last thing that they do. So,
right.
The game is basically made before they end up throwing any of the writing or the dialogue into it, and it's incredibly hard to write for a game as a result of that, because you basically have to make all of that dialogue fit for whatever they've made. And that's probably the reason why you have the complaints that you do, that it doesn't make any goddamn sense that all of this weird exposition happens, and it's literally because the game developers don't know any other way of doing it, so they give it to a writer, and the writer has to figure out how to make it even remotely compelling, and then it goes to voiceover actors who have to try to interject some kind of personality in. So,
but I mean, for the longest time, nobody cared about the
story.
Practical logic of a video game. Not even the story, but you would be playing a game and a leg of meat would fall on the ground and you would eat it and gain health. Nobody cared that didn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's a game. It's stylized to an extent. It's abstracted to an extent. So I don't require realism in my game. Just as I don't require if I'm going from point A to point B, well, that's a 5-day journey, so it better take 5 days of real time of me walking there. Of course I don't want that. I want a stylized version of that, basically. I'm not playing a video game for realism. And yet, it kind of seems, and again, I don't play games, the modern games, but from what I've seen, there's that kind of, well, we got to be realistic about it. And I don't think that's true.
Well, there was a weird push for realism in the 2000s because they realized, oh, we finally have, like, the technology to do this, so we need to do this. And thankfully there's been pushback going in the other direction where it's like, well, we did the thing, so now we don't really need to do the thing anymore, so let's get a little more creative. Not every developer is doing that, obviously, but you'd probably like Shovel Knight then. If you'd like Shovel Knight. It's very clever, and it has just the right amount of believability in it.
Okay. The knight who wields a shovel? Is that
Yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
he wields a shovel. Hence his name, Shovel Knight.
And it's like Mega Man in that all the enemies are Blank Knight, including my favorite name ever of just King Knight.
King Knight.
Emperor Zombie.
But you say that about that the dialogue isn't good or important, but there are games where basically the dialogue is indeed your reward for completing a section.
Yeah.
Okay.
And it gets it very well. The Portal series, which it's also worth pointing out, as far as games go, they're actually fairly short.
Okay.
So it's to the thing, but entirely your reward for getting through the puzzles there are to continue on the dialogue segments, which are very witty and typically very genuinely funny.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just see. Yeah, that's fine. I'm not saying you can't have a fun. And again, I like the LucasArts games. They had witty dialogue and they were entertaining stories. I remember
You'd like Portal because Portal reminded me as a sort of thing, almost like a Disney ride. Almost like Star Tours, where you have the one character who banters with you or just yells at you. And that's pretty much what Portal is, since...
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, that's... Yeah, I that's all fine. I always think of the story of my friend who played... I think it was one of the Solid Snake games, or the Metal Gear Solid games.
Okay.
And he said that he played that game and he was playing it like late at night. It was like 1 a.m.
Yeah.
And he finally beat the game at 1 a.m. and went, oh, now I get to see the final. And so they played the final cutscene is the length of a movie.
Yeah. Metal Gear Solid is a weird case study for that because, well, it's because Hideo Kojima wanted to become a film director, but he ended up doing video games instead, and the later Metal Gear games ended up being very much like movies with interactability rather than games with movie features.
Exactly.
But I was gonna say, the Metal Gear things, though, stand out because it's Hideo Kojima, who's also known for being really experimental with what can games do as a medium.
Yeah.
Laying with the game as a medium for telling a story and seeing what you can do with it.
Yeah. And I think a lot of your complaints come from other people trying to copy Metal Gear Solid because it was so successful and not realizing what Hideo Kojima was trying to do and trying to expand on it rather than just copy it. So
not all experiments are success. I don't think the movie-length cutscene at the end is something that he's replicated. That he's done again, even though he's tried it.
Yeah.
But he seems to be more and more moving towards the idea of trying to move away from cutscenes and integrate the story into gameplay.
Yeah.
Which is what you need to do.
Well, considering that, Silent Hills was canceled, and that was legitimately one of the scariest games that a lot of people had played for a while, and then it was canceled after a demo.
Yeah.
That upset a lot of people because it actually looked really interesting.
And it was a really good demo.
And it was a very good demo. It had a lot of layers to it.
Because it was actually a very interesting ghost story, and it was told entirely through the gameplay and discovery there.
Yeah.
And, it was Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro with some art direction by Junji Ito, and for some reason they canceled that, so you can see why people collectively flipped a shit over it.
Yeah, well, I mean, he was also leaving the company, so kind of coincided with that, and it wasn't...
Well, it was canceled because
He left, yeah.
left.
And he was having issues with Konami at that point anyway, so yeah.
Because everyone has issues with Konami.
Yeah, they're just a pachinko game machine company
Yeah.
now. They just put boobs on everything and you can play pachinko. Yay.
Boo pachinko! Bounce those balls off the nipples, quickly!
That is what pachinko is, apparently.
You don't know what pachinko is, that's okay.
No, I actually do know what pachinko is. I know
Okay.
it's a coin-operated game that's popular in Japan, basically.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does. It's almost like a fruit machine in. I think actually on that note, we're sort of hitting our limit, so
Yeah.
maybe we should wrap it up. Any final
Do we want to
thoughts?
just touch quickly? Because here's one that I don't even really want to read, but I feel obligated. We need to say it for the sake of contemporary in the news thing. Let me just read it aloud. Sarah Silverman, for some reason, informs us she used to let Louis C.K. masturbate in front of her.
With consent.
With
Yeah.
consent. Okay.
Fair enough. Are we sure she wasn't joking when she said
No,
that?
okay, I actually read through this,
Uh-huh.
Okay.
and and the obvious joke is that literally nobody asked or wanted to know this.
No.
Which is entirely true, but to Silverman's defense somewhat, she seems to be, like, saying that this is something they did as friends, and also drawing a line of why that was okay, but what he did with other people was not okay.
Okay. I mean, obviously, yes.
I mean, yeah.
But it's also
The
kind of
thing
like
that-
you did not have to share this with the class.
No. That's very nice. Please sit down. We all would have preferred if you had not said anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just makes
Not helping.
both of y'all look even weirder, and it's not like... Yeah. No. Stop. I mean, at this point, it's like, the sooner we stop talking about Louis C.K., the better.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So let's stop!
Yeah.
Yes, I'm glad
So we
brought it up.
will.
Yes. Fair enough. Louis C.K. We'll talk about him in 10 years. He'll be then he can do his comeback. When he's an
No,
old
no
man.
comeback.
Dude, phrasing!
None!
No comeback. Fair
No.
enough.
Stop saying come back in this context!
He'll return.
Adam, just end us off.
He'll explode back onto the scene with a. Anyway, okay.
Don't
Okay,
die.
fair enough. I guess we'll wrap it up here. Again, all the links we've discussed in today's show will be underneath the video or audio. And you can leave comments as well. And we have links to our Patreons. If you like what you hear, please consider becoming a Patreon for one or all of us. You'll get access to comics and art, as well as getting to hear the show at least a few days early. And I wanted to give a shout out to Jack Feerick, who wrote our theme song.
Woo!
And finally, a reminder that I'm on Twitter as Prankster36, Ing is Ingdammit, and Avi is Avi Via Ve. And you
Yes.
can follow one or all of us for updates, including notifications for when we're doing the Twitch stream, because we do record this live show live on Twitch, as we're doing right now. So good night from all of us here at the show, and from all the desperate attention seekers out there churning the internet chum bucket. We'll see you again next week.
Oh, also, we are going to be trying to switch to weekly. We'll see how that goes.
Oh, that's right. Yes, it's going to be a weekly show if we can swing it for the next little while. But as you can see, they're also a little bit shorter now. They were getting a bit mammoth, so we're going to cut those down.
Yeah.
All right, so good night, friends. Have a good night. We'll see you all in the funny pages.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.